Peace and abundance always. My name is Peter Abundant, aka Dr. Abundant, PhD and ordained minister of metaphysical sciences, which is the study of going beyond the physical and getting deeper meanings behind the things that we see that are always around us, always giving us signs, symbols, giving us indications as to where we are in life and if we're on the right path. And basically, are we living in true alignment with our true selves, which is consciousness. So today we're going to go into numerology, particularly the number 2. And then we're going to go deeper into angel numbers, focused on the 2s. So that way you get a understanding as to really when you wake up at 2:00 in the morning, 2:22, when you look randomly and you see 2222, you actually know what that means. And more importantly, you know what to do when you see those signs, right? Those signs of synchronicity, those signs that are letting you know where you are on a particular journey, what you need to do when it comes to particular areas of your life that you're focused on changing, rearranging, manifesting. You have these signs that let you know if you're on the right path or not, right? Or rather, not so much if you're on the right path, but what to do along this path. So we're going to get into number 2. Now, number 2 is a very interesting number because it deals in connection. It deals with mainly balance, right? When we balance things, when you think of balance, you are basically balancing two things, right? You're balancing two ones, essentially, right? We already discussed the number 1 and how the number 1 represents being a leader, right? Being a initiator. Whereas 2, on the other hand, is a little bit different in a sense that it really focuses on intuition. It focuses on receiving. It is more yin in nature versus yang in nature. So when we think about the number 2, what I really want you to think about is balance, harmony, relationships, duality, okay, which is where we begin to separate the oneness of the number 1 of all things and begin to create a spectrum, right? And we begin to understand there's a duality that is created from our experiences that gives us perspective, that gives you insight, that gives you the ability to analyze, that gives you the insight to actually decide on preferences, right? Ideal situations, goals, right? Gives you the insight to recognize what you do want versus what you don't want. Okay. So 2 is a very important number. And 2 also represents a softer characteristic versus the number 1. Okay. So again, it's more about intuition. It's more about listening. It's more about trusting. So 2 represents balance and harmony, right? It's a reminder to maintain peace in your process of creating, of doing, of even being in action. Because a lot of times when we're in action, which most times we are, right? We are creating, we are looking to materialize and manifest something. So we think that being on a constant grind is very important. But when we get into really looking within ourselves during those phases, we think that, okay, doing is more important, but you have to do and then you have to allow, which is a natural way of looking at balance. You see, you have to do and then you have to allow the things that you have done to actually take shape, to build up a momentum, right? To take on a life of its own. And so you have to think in terms of the number 2 as allowing, as it really taking its life and time. Okay. 2 represents also, obviously, right, partnerships, relationships. When you are wanting to be in a relationship, right, you are wanting to be a pair, you're wanting to be a couple. That is the number 2. But it also represents collaboration. It also represents really nurturing the connections that you have with other people, right? the connections that you have with your family, with your partner, with your coworkers, with your associates, even the strangers you bypass in the street. You see, because when you recognize that these connections are ultimately a reflection of ourselves, and even when you think in terms of reflections, that is, right, a image of you and another version of yourself. And so that also represents two. You see, so when we look at relationships with other people, look at it as a reflection of the self, because how we deal in those relationships, how we interact with people represents essentially how we feel within ourselves, how we think within ourselves, the biases, the judgments, right? The love, the admiration, the envy, the jealousy, like all those things. And it's not about them being right or wrong. It's really about recognizing that when we see those things come up, when we are engaging in our relationships, it is an opportunity to take ownership and to see the things that you need to work on in your, along your spiritual journey. Okay. Two also represents, like I said before, intuition and trust. It's really about allowing the universe to do what it does. Now, I really want you to get that. Don't think of the universe as something separate from you. Don't think in terms of co-creation. I don't like the word co-creation because that entails separation. You are one with the universe. Look at the universe as a layer of self. Okay. It is your higher self. So when you think in terms of really connecting and trusting the universe, think in terms of trusting your higher self, trusting a part of you that is all knowing, that is wise, that is only looking out for your best interest, even when it is bringing forth things that are creating discomfort, right? Creating, or inciting or pulling triggers within you. That is for you to see that there is a need to address this trauma, right? To heal from a particular, event, or to process or evolve past a particular limiting belief system. You see, two also represents patience and divine timing. So it's one of those things that you have to recognize that things are happening in perfect order. And so, again, going back to the need for action, right? Doing. It is important to allow. It is important to recognize that there are other aspects of who you are outside of your conscious mind, that part of you that is always in action, wanting to do, analyze, create, that there is other aspects, thus the universe, that has to align with your consciousness, with your subconscious mind, right? With your consciousness in order to materialize that which you desire, right? Because there's always a gestation process in manifestation, in creation. And so two represents you trusting, being patient, and allowing for that divine timing. Patience is one of those things that many of us struggle with, especially on this conscious journey and recognizing our nature as creators. And so when we want to manifest something, we oftentimes are, again, caught up in the doing, and then we're just simply waiting, and we are sitting, wanting the thing to materialize itself instantly as it did in our minds, right? Because that's the power of the imagination. It is instant. Whereas the universe in this physical realm of existence, it isn't that way, right? It takes time for a tree to grow. You see, it takes time for a sperm to gestate and grow into an infant, right? It takes time for that infant to grow into an adult. So every time we look at this physical realm, we have to acknowledge time to an extent, right? So patience is very important when it comes to that. Diplomacy, cooperation. This goes into relationships. This goes into creating partnerships, recognizing that you are not isolated in the sense that you are all that is in the universe. Yes, you are the creator of your universe, but other individuals are creators of their universe as well. So we have to respect them in their universe, just like we require them to respect our own. And so this is where you take great consideration into their creation, right? Their reality. And thus you cooperate with it to an extent that allows you to be in alignment with that which you desire. And if there isn't a way for you to corroborate or to collaborate or to cooperate, then it won't really benefit you. And so you just simply acknowledge that, because that was the lesson, right, in that exchange. And then you just simply look to create better connections, right? Better opportunities, better, connections and relationships with people who will cooperate and align with that which you desire, right? So it's a call to work together, but you don't need to force it, because you know the world is infinite. So recognize that these are all opportunities for recognition as to where you are, who you are, and also what you need to align yourself with. Okay. So now let's get into the angel numbers, which is essentially, you can call the single digit 2 an angel number, right? Because in itself, it is a sign, it is a symbol. But usually when we look at angel numbers, it is a sequence, right? There is a repeating sequence where it is like 222, right? 2222, right? There are the same digit that repeats itself. And from my understanding, the more that digit repeats itself, the more the universe, which is your higher self, communicating to you a particular message. Okay. And that message is ultimately trust and alignment, right? So trusting in the process, embracing balance, right? Remember, 2 means balance. So when you see these numbers, 22222222, it is your higher self communicating to you that you're on the right path. Just have patience, right? Practice and embrace balance, and allow whatever you put in place, right? Whatever you are doing or have done, trusting that it will bear fruit. Okay. You have to acknowledge that the spiritual realm is instant, whereas because the physical realm is the other side of the other spectrum, the other side of the spectrum, that it is then not going to be instant, right? It's going to take time, right? So recognize that there's a contrast that is always existing. And this again gets into the number 2 of duality. Oneness is the essence of the thing. And it can be life itself, all of existence. It can be a particular topic of relationships, money, right? But there is always 2 sides of the spectrum. Okay, there is a contrast. We often call that the opposites, but really it is not that one is not and the other is. It is really that they are simply sides, right? The extreme sides of the spectrum. And so when you think in terms of balance, you're really thinking in terms of recognizing that, okay, these are just simply 2 sides of the same essence. Okay. That essentially is what we're talking about. So you want to just trust in that. If you are somebody who is experiencing, say, great poverty, right? You're broke all the time. Well, that's the essence of money, right? And so you have to simply align yourself with the frequency of having more money. It's the same essence, it's the same line, but you are on an extreme side, right? The negative side, the lower vibrational side. And so now you just simply have to balance the scales, okay? Because now, I mean, if you look at an actual scale, if there's nothing on the scale, that side of the scale is going to be higher, all right? That represents you being in a state of being broke. But as you recognize that with balance, you begin to create money, you create prosperity, you create financial abundance. And then that creates balance. Okay. Some people can go the other way where it's like extreme wealth. right? And that extreme wealth can often lead to other imbalances, right? Where they just don't see the world in a way that is practical. They don't even see people in a way that is practical. So that is another example of just how it's important to maintain balance. So when you are looking to create something, you're looking to do something, you have to acknowledge the importance of balance along this journey. Okay. So seeing two is a message that harmony and peace, right, is in the works. Okay. Being restored. So once you acknowledge that, then you see, okay, whatever you're doing is actually working. So you can allow, be patient, trust. Okay. Remember, we talked about trust as well. So this is the sign that the universe is aligning things behind the scenes. A lot of times, why it's so important to recognize balance within yourself is because when you are in the process of creating, doing, right? And you need to trust in the universe, because what's happening many times is the universe is really moving things around. And so when you're about to make a breakthrough, a lot of times that is when things are the most chaotic. And so you feel more frustration, you feel more anxiety, you feel more flustered, because it seems like things are going the completely opposite direction from what you desire and have worked for. But what's really happening is the universe, your higher self, is making vast adjustments and changes. And those vast adjustments or changes are simply the universe aligning things behind the scenes. Sometimes they're just not behind the scenes because you see it, you feel it. Okay. That is you being connected with that higher self. But most times the ego will see it and will identify it as things are going wrong, right? See, we shouldn't want these things. We shouldn't desire these things. We shouldn't seek to better ourselves. That's what the ego is kind of saying. Or we should quit because it's not working out. This isn't meant for me. I'm not smart enough. I'm not good enough. That is what the ego is creating because it hasn't been managed. But when you manage the ego, you recognize, okay, this is actually the signs that I'm on the right path. So the movement of alignment that the universe is creating looks chaotic. But when you're aligned with consciousness versus ego, you recognize that that chaos is really progress. It's really manifestation at work. Okay. It's really the universe, the physical realm, actually adjusting to the spiritual realm. It is the physical realm, the physical essence of who you are, this physical reality, aligning itself with your consciousness, right? Your spiritual reality. Okay. Remember, the spiritual reality is the thing that is instant. So you have the imagination that you want that thing, that you desire that thing. Therefore, it instantly happens. You continue to visualize that thing over and over and over again with the feeling and emotion. Thus, you are taking the action. You are balancing it out with being patient. And then thus, you understand that the universe, right, that duality of balance, the number two, is about recognizing that the universe has to catch up. That's all that is. And when the chaos is happening, that is what the universe is doing. All right. So let's get into more details with particular angel numbers. So, and the variations, right? So number two, we already established, represents balance, trust, patience, right? In the current situation. It's just you recognizing, okay, when you see that number two, usually when I see it, it stands alone, right? Because we can look for numbers all day long and make it have meaning, but that's not quite the same as angel numbers. It's almost like you're seeing a number that sticks out to you in a way that is a little bit odd, or it is so sudden, right? You know, it's like you just around the corner, around a building, and boom, there's this big number two right there. That is what I'm talking about, right? And the two is there. Everybody else is walking past that two as well. But for you, it sticks out particularly well. Okay. or you see the number 22, right? Now we're starting to see things that are a little bit odd, more odd than usual. Okay, why is this 22 just sticking out at me? It's a weird number. Why am I walking past this person who I'm having a great conversation with that is, we're talking about something that you want to actually create and you're in the works of actually creating, whether it be, fitness, writing that book, going on that vacation to that, you know, weird island that nobody's ever heard of. And that person you had the conversation to or with actually has been there. And maybe they're wearing a sports jersey that says 22 on it. Things like that is what we're talking about. You see, where these numbers come out in a way that shows you that you are in sync, right? And so when you understand how these numbers, what they mean and how they show up, then you can recognize that they are signs of your higher self, the universe, actually letting you know and giving you these messages. And so learning these numbers will be very important because they allow you to recognize, okay, I am on the right path. And that is extremely important. Some people will disregard it and say, it doesn't matter. I'm going to just keep going anyway. But there is something important about being validated, right? Being encouraged and being told, okay, yes, you are doing it right. Yes, it is happening, because that relieves you of any little bit of doubt, any little bit of insecurity or questioning if you're doing the right thing. And it allows you to have more confidence. So that gives you even more fuel to keep going forward. You see? So let's get back into these ancient numbers. 22 is the master number, and it represents spiritual alignment, intuition, and the manifestation of your dreams. Okay. Just like I said, with that example, with the person wearing a sports jersey, wearing number 22, talking about something random and specific to something that you've been thinking about or creating. All right. 222 is a sign of divine encouragement. Okay. So this is about faith. Okay. This is about not giving up. This is about understanding, okay, you are truly in alignment on the right path. Just keep going. That's all this is. Okay. Which is a very profound and powerful statement. All right. And now finally, 2222. So we're talking about 4 twos back to back. And that is a powerful reminder that you're exactly where you need to be. Okay. And that everything is falling into place. So again, keep moving, keep going forward. You see, these numbers really give you some insight as to like where you are, where, just giving you a glimpse of understanding that, first off, the numbers are not something that's necessary for you to create. So as you are creating something, you're living up to your nature simply by doing that, right? We're always doing that anyway. The problem is we're not mindful and conscious about what we're creating. So these numbers, whether you are somebody who simply doesn't acknowledge them and you don't really see them or care to see them, that's okay, because you're going to create the thing that you desire anyway, especially if you align with consciousness. But these numbers help you, again, with recognizing that you're on the right path or seeing if you need to make adjustments. And as we go through each and every number, you're going to get insights that, okay, you need to pivot, you need to change, you need to try this, you need to try that. That is going to help you to materialize that which you desire a lot faster, right? Especially in this physical realm. We're not talking about speed in the spiritual realm because there is no speed. There is no time in the spiritual realm. That is instantaneous. But in the physical realm, there is time, there is speed. And that is what we're referring to. Now, let's get more into the spiritual meaning of the number 2. And we're going to reference different points of view of, whether, we're talking biblical, if we're talking spiritual, we're talking cultural, so for example, sacred geometry, 2 represents polarity. Okay. Again, what I mentioned before about the spectrum, that's polarity, where we're talking about what most people recommend or recognize as two completely opposite things. Polarity recognizes it as one, but two sides of it. Okay. But they are connected. They are essentially the same essence. And then we're talking about connection. Okay. We're talking about it being connected. Essentially, we're talking about the oneness of it all, right? Two, though we see them as separate, right? They are essentially ones, right? That are together and paired together, that communicate and in connection with one another, that are inseparable. Okay. Now, in biblical terms, the number represents witnessing or testimony. It's about faith and relationship. So when you see the numbers two, you could even talk about Adam and Eve and that dynamic, okay, of creation and the story and, being there for one another and possibly making mistakes or not, depending on how you view the relationship between Adam and Eve, right? So when it comes to biblical numerology, two represents testimony and witnessing. In Chinese philosophy, I mentioned it earlier, two represents the yin energy, right? Which is more receptive, which is more about inner wisdom, which is more in line with the feminine energy. Whereas masculine energy, that is represented in the number one, okay? That is more aggressive, that is more outright, that is more action oriented, that is more masculine, you see? So now what do you do when you see a lot of number twos everywhere? Okay. So the first thing is practice patience again, because remember, two is about trust. It's about patience. Okay. So things you want to do is you want to recognize that things are happening, right? Again, behind the scenes. And so you have to trust in that. Don't think that you're going to change it, shift it, outsmart it, right? Just trust and allow. Okay. When you see the number twos, another thing, again, twos represents relationships. It represents, being cooperative. It represents connections. So any relationship issues or relationships that you feel are special to you and you think that you need to express your gratitude and appreciation and admiration, then do so. Cultivate that relationship. If there's a relationship where you feel like you're going through something and it's going on hard times or difficulty, or there's some awkwardness between you two, communicate. Okay. Squash the beefs, squash the arguments, and just simply come together from a place of love, respect, and understanding. Okay. Also, listen to your intuition. Number two is really about connecting with that intuitive nature. Okay. Where you feel like, if things feel aligned, you trust it. If things don't feel aligned, then you trust in your ability to shift that, right? You make a change, and it doesn't have to be anything drastic. It could be something really minute and small, but you recognize that there is something going on and you honor that within yourself. A lot of times we go through these moments of feeling like something ain't right. And because we can't quantify it, we can't see it, it's not tangible, then we simply disregard it. And then it comes up later on in life and we say, you know what? I knew something wasn't right, but I went along with it anyway, just because I couldn't identify what it was. So trust your intuition. Recognize that things aren't that serious. Okay. In the sense that you need to be desperate with, decisions or taking actions. You don't need to be rash, right? You don't need to have to come from a place of, oh, I have to do this thing because this is a one in a lifetime chance. No, don't fall for that, because that's when you tend to create opportunities or decisions that don't align with who you truly are. You have to recognize that the universe is all for you, right? This is your universe. So the idea that, oh, this is only a once in a lifetime thing and I have to act fast and rash, it's not the way to go. So trust your intuition, allow yourself to really get and connect with yourself and listen. Okay. Listen to yourself. When you see the numbers twos a lot, this is about restoring balance. Okay. When your life is feeling out of sync, just make the adjustments. Twos represent balance. If you see a lot of twos, it can represent that everything is in balance, right? But it can also be a sign that you need to bring things to balance, right? Especially in certain areas of life. If money is hard, right, then you need to bring things into balance. So if you see a lot of twos and you're thinking about money, you have to recognize, okay, there's some shifts that I have to make. Now, that may seem obvious, right? Because nobody wants to be broke, but it's a sign that maybe this is the time to do that thing that you've been thinking about, but scared to do, right? That will actually make a shift in your income. If you're in a relationship situation and you see twos and you're in a relationship where you're not fulfilled or happy, or there's been a lot of arguing and fighting, then that's an opportunity to, okay, you know what? I'm seeing a lot of twos. Let's bring balance into our relationship. Let's possibly see a therapist. Let's possibly go on vacation. Let's possibly do something, a workshop. Let's possibly transform, AKA end the relationship. Let's possibly just be friends, So you have to not just assume that the universe and that higher self is just going to do everything. You have all these other aspects of who you are. That is your opportunity, right? Those are your tools to make the change. Your conscious mind is about recognizing patterns, recognizing and coming up with judgments and conclusions, and recognizing that this doesn't work for me anymore, right? So you have to then create the balance, find what works for you, so that way you can actually live fulfilled and happy. Okay. So here's a couple of exercises, or one exercise in particular that I want to share with you is the number 2 alignment ritual. Okay. So first off, you got to identify the area of imbalance. So like I said, when it comes to relationships, when it comes to work, when it comes to money. Okay. So let's just say money, right? Because we all want more money. Now, what you want to do is you want to write down 2 ways that you can restore balance to this situation, particularly money. So let's say you're financially strapped, you're broke, you're going through a tough time. Well, how can we make this shift? So what you're going to do is you're going to write down 2 things. One is something internal, like a mindset that you can shift. The second thing is external. What can you do? Okay. So a mind shift can be read a book, right, on finances. The physical thing, the external thing can be start a investment account. Okay. 2 things. They may not and don't have to connect with one another, but they still relate to the topic, which is money. Okay. Relationships. One thing, you can listen to podcasts about healthy, loving relationships, not the drama stuff, not the traumatic stuff. Cultivating healthy, listening to healthy, beautiful stories about relationships. You can just listen to those things every single day. Okay. Something external, you can write a love letter to your partner. Okay. Or even just simply sit and tell your partner everything you appreciate about them. And that's it. Don't wait for them to say anything back. Just be an expression of love, do something, and then let it go. Okay. So those are 2 examples of things you can do to actually create the balance. Then, of course, affirmations are very important. So create an affirmation, right? Something that is in the present tense that speaks to having the thing that you desire, right? I trust that all things are aligning perfectly in my life. Okay. That particular affirmation aligns with the number 2 in its nature, about alignment, about balance, about trust. All right. And then you simply take a small step today to bring harmony into that area of your life. So that can be the one exterior thing right, that you do to take action. You do that today. It doesn't have to be a big deal. It doesn't have to be a big, extravagant, dramatic thing. It could be something very, very small, but significant, you see, because it is the small things on a consistent basis that create the biggest change. All right. So that is your exercise as it pertains to number 2. So 2 is the number of faith, the number of trust, the number of divine alignment. It is your reminder that you are supported. Okay. You are supported because you are one with this universe. The universe does not want you to lose because the universe does not want to lose. The universe wins. So therefore, you are one with the universe. Therefore, you win as well. You just simply have to recognize and understand the power of your mind, the power of all the aspects of who you are when they are in proper alignment, the power of the signs, the synchronicities, right? The signs, the numbers, and recognizing and seeing that all of these things are you essentially helping and supporting you to create that which you desire. And you ultimately living up to your highest potential, right? And creating your highest good and creating that which you desire, because that's what this whole thing is about. Understanding that you are the creator. And so in order for you to create the things, the life, right? The purpose, the universe that you want, you have to recognize that all these things are just simply indicators, tools that will support you in doing that. Thank you so much for joining me. Feel free to go to drabundant.com, subscribe to my daily newsletter, get access to this free ebook, and so much more. Continue to join me on this journey. Peace and abundance always.